Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today for this workshop on guided reading. I'm super excited that you're here. And today we're going to focus on guided reading for kindergartners through second graders. So I hope by the end of this you are excited to do guided reading and really ready to work with your kiddos in small groups. So we will go ahead and get started right away here. So I'm Eileen Clausen. If you follow me on our blog or on social media or on TBT, you've probably seen my face somewhere around there, but I really love sharing literacy ideas with teachers and providing tips. So if you don't follow me already on any of these spots, I highly recommend doing so you can get a peek into some tips that you can use in your classroom as well as some of my resources. So while I have that up there, I just wanted to share a little bit about myself. When I started teaching kindergarten 13 years ago, I had no idea what I was doing when it came to teaching reading. It was like such a big deal to me that I was responsible for teaching these new early readers how to read, when I knew from my undergrad the only class I really took on reading was about running records. So taking that into consideration, I decided that pretty early on in my teaching career that I needed to get my master's in literacy, because I was the only one on my team and I really didn't have many resources, like social media wasn't around then, and it was really up to me to learn on my own. So I got my master's in literacy and got my reading specialist certificate. And after that, I actually became a reading specialist, and I first began working with kindergartners and first graders, which I absolutely loved. And then I went to a new school and I moved on to kindergarten through fifth grade, which I also ended up actually really loving. So in all that time as a reading specialist, I've taught a ton of guided reading lessons, and I just really wanted to share with you the best part about guided reading. So another thing I realized when I became a reading specialist was that I was always provided a curriculum, and I was given intervention guides, whatever it was. I was always given something as a reading specialist to use with my students, whereas the teachers I worked with were required to come to the book room. They had to come up with comprehension questions and word work and everything else to go along with each guided reading lesson. So I really tried to make an effort to make their lives easier by assisting them. And then I, would do presentations on literacy. And then I started really sharing things in my blog and social media to try to help other teachers out there besides the ones that I worked with directly at my schools. So I also began creating my own products, which included guided reading passages that are leveled, as well as a lesson plan and running record to go with them, so that teachers had everything right there ready for them, rather than spending time, so much time trying to figure out what to do for each of their guided reading groups. So I made those really for levels pre-A through V to try to help all those elementary teachers out, so that you have the resources right there ready for you, and you can really just concentrate on engaging your groups. So that's a little bit about my background as an educator, but I really do love guided reading, and I really love sharing it with everyone else. So today we're going to go over what guided reading is and how it should look in your classroom. I'm going to explain why you should be doing it and how it's meaningful for both you and the students. And then I'm also going to go over what a typical guided reading lesson looks like. So I'm going to include different engagement ideas that you can use with your students during the different parts of the lessons to make the most of your time together. And I also hope you stick around for the end, because I'm going to share some exclusive freebies for you. You'll be able to download them right from this webinar. But basically it includes a parent communication letter. I created this so many years ago when I started using benchmark guided reading testing as a way to communicate to the parents what they were actually doing in the levels with their kids, so like they could find out which level their child was, and they could find out what they could do as a parent to actually help their kids at home. So this is really a tool that you can use to help explain what benchmark testing is, and it can explain like what the parent can do at home to help out their child. It doesn't have to be the end all be all. This is just one piece of communication to help your parents get more involved in their literacy life. There's also a list of word work activity ideas that I'll go over today, as well as prompts that you can use while you're guiding your readers in guided reading groups. And then I also have a blank guided reading lesson plan that follows the same format that I follow. And you'll also see samples of my level B, level G, and level L passages. So you'll get a passage, a running record, and a lesson plan, all that goes together. And then the last part that you'll get is a certificate of completion. So I don't know if your district is one that allows it, but districts have started counting webinars as a form of continuing education credit. So if yours does, there is the certificate at the end of this that you can use for that. So stick around to the end so you can see all this. So when we're talking about the basics of guided reading, it all starts with a small group. So basically, you have a small group in front of you. So this can be at a kidney bean table. I used to always call it the jelly bean table because it sounds more exciting than just the guided reading table. It can be at a circle table. It can be on the ground, on the carpet, whatever it is that works best for your classroom. So if you do flexible seating, if you have a lot of space on the ground and you like to do that, that's wonderful too. The point is just like you have your little group of students right in front of you and you're ready to work. And there should be about 3 to 6 students per group. I don't recommend any more than that. If you can, do your best to keep it at below 6, just because then it takes away the importance of that small guided reading group. 3 is amazing if you happen to have that much time and that few students that you can divide it up that way. So while the students are in your group, they're actually going to be working at their instructional level, and that is predetermined from the benchmark testing that hopefully is done either by your reading specialist or by you or by someone in your building. And during that time, they're using level texts that are at the instructional level. So you're not doing frustrational because that would be too difficult and you'd be spending way too much time guiding your students. And they wouldn't be moving forward. And then you don't want to do independent level text because those are too simple and they don't need your help at all with independent level. That's for when they're reading on their own. So while students are in the group with you, they are reading the text by themselves. So that means you're not having kids do round robin. You're not having everyone wait their turn to read. Everyone starts reading when it's time for that in the lesson, and they're going through the text and whisper reading and really reading through the story on their own. While they're doing that, you are providing students with support. So you are going to be guiding them with those prompts like I suggested and that kind of thing, so you can identify how they're doing as readers. So we'll dive deeper into this as we continue. So the main reasons that you should be doing guided reading are what I have listed here. So I'll start with building confidence. I think it's so important to be helping readers, whether they are good readers, whether they're struggling readers, but it's just so important to help them develop their confidence as a reader so that they want to continue to do it. Because as we know, the better we feel about something, the more likely we are to do it, the more we want to do it, and the better we become at it. So I have that little note there from one of my sweet first graders a few years ago. I've always kept this, and I just thought it was so nice because she worked so hard. Reading was not something that came super easy to her, but she worked so hard and she became such a good reader. So she just, thanked me for helping her. And that's really what it's about. Like, they build those relationships with you during that small group time, and they really feel like, wow, I'm becoming a better reader. So developing that's confidence in them while you're in the small group together is the perfect time for it. You also want to do this because you can engage your students so much more when they're right there in front of you in that small group, rather than if it's a whole group activity. So you are using different tools, and from your own excitement, you're getting them engaged and ready to read each day. You can also really get to know your readers because there's a small group of them in front of you. And you can then determine what their strengths are as readers and are there things that they could use help with. So you really are getting to know their styles as readers and what you can do to keep them growing as readers. And then if you've followed me for a while, this is one thing I really stress. You should be building a community of readers in your room, and during guided reading, it's a perfect time to really focus on this, because you have all the kids there in the small group together who are kind of feeding off each other. So if you make a really big deal about, like, we're all readers here and we're so excited to be reading, the kids get excited about it, and then they all realize, like, oh, I'm a reader. And then they become lifelong readers, which of course is a big goal as teachers. Okay, so here's what a typical lesson looks like. Most teachers have 15 to 20 minutes per group. You might not be meeting with every single group every single day, but when you do have your groups in front of you, you usually have about 15 to 20 minutes, which in the grand scheme of the day is not a long time, especially when you think about how much important stuff is going on in guided reading groups. But this is the breakdown of what it should be. So if you want to screenshot this or just, jot this down for future reference, in that 15 to 20 minutes, you're going to be spending your time broken down like this, and we'll dive deeper into each part of this 15 to 20 minutes in the next slides. So the first 2 to 3 minutes is actually rereading a previous text, so you're getting them warmed up for reading. Then the next few minutes you can do a picture walk and word work focused activities that relate directly to the text. The next few minutes is spent with the students actually reading their new text, and then the last few minutes, 3 to 5 minutes, is the comprehension piece where students are focusing on what the text was all about. So like I said, you don't have to do this with every single group every day. It's just a matter of how you can fit your groups into your schedule. But one thing I highly recommend that'll keep you on task and on target is having a timer nearby. So if you use your phone for your timer, if you just have a timer, whatever it is, if you have one right near you, you set it up for your 15 to 20 minutes, and then you can break it down. So after 2 minutes, that timer's going off, the books are going away, and then you're moving right into your picture walk and word work. After that next 5 minutes, that word work stuff gets put away. It's now time to read your new text. So it'll just really keep you on track. And the more consistent you are with this, the better it is for the students, because each day they'll know, like, okay, I'm not going to dilly-dally and just keep pretending I'm reading. Like, they know they have to move on, and they know that time is very precious, that you just have to keep moving on and on. So that's a great tip that I recommend. Okay, so in the before reading part, again, you're focusing so much on building this confidence in the readers and getting them engaged. Because your readers are rereading a text at the beginning, you are really focusing on that confidence and fluency and getting them to feel really great about what they're doing. So having everything right there in front of you and ready to go will make the most of the time, whether it's a book or a folder, whatever it is that you're using. If you have it all set up right before they come to sit down, you're going to get them engaged right from the beginning, and you're not going to miss any time of you trying to set everything up. So if you use passages, I always recommend having them in a folder or binding them so that each student has their own. If you use books, just make sure every student has their own copy so that they are taking ownership of it and they're able to read their own. They're not sharing it with others. They're just doing their own work in front of them. And the great thing with these folders is that they have this selection of passages that they already know they can read, and they can go through and get it all done in that first few minutes where they're just reviewing some of their previous texts. And this is also the perfect time to use your fun little tools. So grab out the whisper phones, get out those cute little googly eyes and the pointers, whatever it is that you want to use. So students have it right there in front of them so that they're ready to use it and they're ready to go. So again, you might have a little basket right in front of you. You might already have it right at their seats, so that as soon as they sit down, they pick up their whisper phone, they start reading, or they pick up their pointer and they start going. And these kind of things, like, they work for all ages. You can even use these all the way up to 5th grade if you work with 5th graders, just because it's kind of like this novelty factor, and they know, like, oh, I don't get to use it during the rest of the day, but when I get to the guided reading table, I can use it for my first few minutes. However it is that you want to set it up, just try to make it exciting for them and engaging. You might even have like Monday be whisper phone days where they're focusing a little more on fluency. Tuesday might just be the googly eyes, whatever it is, however you want to do it, and whatever makes each reader be the best reader they can be. While the students are rereading, you're going to have one student that you're actually doing a running record with. If you have my passages, I do have a running record for every single passage. So this would be for the text that they read the day before, and you're just having one student go through. Again, it's only 2 to 3 minutes, so it's real quick. They're going to go through and read through that part of the story, and you're going to mark up the text, mark up any errors, and jot little notes down, and then you can always come back to it later to mark up their actual score. But this is to give you an idea of if that reader is at the right spot, or if they're ready to move forward to another group, or if they really need to focus on something like 2 vowels walking, some specific thing that they're having trouble with, and then you can really hone in on that skill with those students. So I wanted to show you 2 different videos that include examples of a picture walk. A picture walk is super brief. It's less than a minute. I include this in my lesson plans. Basically, you're just introducing the story and explaining one little thing about it, and then you're going to focus maybe on some sort of word skill so that you're modeling how to figure out those words, and then have the students actually do the word work next. So I'm going to show you a video of a level A passage, and then I'm also going to show you a video of a level E text, just to show you how they are slightly different, but that they also both just take a minute or less than a minute. So I'm going to show you the passage first. So here we go. All right, readers, we're going to read a new story today that is called Farm Animals. When we're reading this today, we're going to learn all about different farm animals that you may see. There are many animals that live on the farm. the sentences will all follow the same pattern. So we're going to see the sentences begin with the same words. I see a. Then the last word is going to change on each line to match the picture. So when you're reading, I want you to make sure you're seeing these words and saying them. I see a, and then look at the last word and the picture to make sure it makes sense. So let's try one. On the third line, I see a picture of a sheep. As I'm reading it, I'm going to say the words, I see a sheep. Yep, that makes sense. Shh, sheep. Okay, so next we're going to watch the one that is a book. All right, readers, today we have an excellent book called A Big Guy Took My Ball. It's all about our friends Gerald and Piggy and a little adventure they go on today to find out where their ball is. So we're going to see words that have added endings. So we're going to see ER at the end, which we're saying to show if something's comparing the sizes. And then we have ing added at the end. So for example, when you're reading here, thank you for finding my little ball. So I found the word find first, and then I added the ending. So while you're reading today, we're going to make sure that you are adding those endings as we find out what Gerald and Piggy are up to. Okay, so as you can see, they were both literally under a minute. It does not take a lot of time for you to give a quick introduction, and this can be done all the way up to your higher level students because there's nothing wrong with introducing the text before they're reading it because it builds this kind of excitement and engagement so that they know what they're about to read. So if you haven't tried out picture walks yet, I highly recommend doing them right before you do your word work so then it leads right into whatever words that you want them to focus on. So now you're still in the before reading section, but your timer has gone off and you're going to go ahead and focus on your word work now. So for this, again, if you can bring in more tools to use with the students, this is a perfect time to do so they're really physically moving things and really actively engaged. So I'm going to show you a little video of an example of how you can use these objects that I have there in front of you. Here's a quick way that you can have students using a variety of tools to actually practice saying the sounds in a word. So getting them really to break down those sounds so that when they're reading the books on their own, they can actually figure out how to put the word together. So they can either grab these, for example. So a stretchy frog, and we're going to focus on the word shop. So this is a level E text where they are just introduced to digraphs and really trying to figure out how to put them together. So they're going to do shop and then put it together, shop. If they're doing the car, they can do something similar, shop, put it together, shop. And then the last way is with these little bracelets with beads. They're just going to say shop and then pull them all together, shop. So that's just one way that you could practice for your word work using different tools. All right, so basically the more tools you can throw into the mix, the better, just because you are then engaging your students. So I want to show a few more word work ideas that you can hopefully implement with your readers. So this is a level B text, and at this level, of course, students are focusing really heavily on basic sight words and simple sentences. So getting them to really practice those sight words in a bunch of different ways is what's going to really help them out while they're actually reading the text. So you might have them copy the sight words onto their whiteboard. They might not know what they are already, so make sure that you're actually showing them and explaining what those words are first. And then you might use magnetic letters. And one thing I learned, not super early on, unfortunately, but I realized that especially with struggling readers or kids at this level, if they don't know the sight words and what they're trying to make, if you hand them a container full of letters, they are going to be lost. So that's when you might have your container of letters, but then provide them with a smaller one that has only a few letters that they need specifically for those words today, with maybe just a few extra. So it's still slightly challenging, but not too difficult. So providing them with the letters in C and A, and then having them make the words and read it and practice it, and then going to the text and finding them as well. So they might be circling it, underlining it, highlighting it, whatever it is, using those fun tools so that they're actually looking for the words. And then in the middle there, I have those little mini erasers. You can get it like craft stores, Target, wherever it is. Those right there, they're actually covering up the word big. So big is a word that they're going to see in the story. Maybe they haven't practiced it much yet. So you're having them cover up that word every time they see it so that when they get to the text, they'll say, oh, I know, that's the word big. We practiced that during our word work. On the upper right there, I have, because again, these students might be only really knowing some of their letter names and sounds and still making mistakes with those. So you might have them focus on the letter B and say, okay, I want you to look in the text and I want you to find a word that begins with the letter B. You do not have to find an actual, you're not telling them to find birds. You want them to just find the letter B. So then when they do find it, you can say, okay, that's the word birds. Birds is a word that starts with the letter B. Let's see if we can find another one. Oh, yep, we found another one. That's the word big. So same thing with the letter P. So really you're focusing on an individual letter and having them find those words so that they feel successful and they're ready to read the story. Another thing I have included in my nonfiction passages, I have the vocabulary cards to go with the stories. And I don't know if you've noticed when you read level A, level B, early level of stories, but they have some really difficult vocabulary. So they might have super simple sentences, but they have difficult vocabulary that lots of students haven't been exposed to before. So introducing those words before they read the story will give them that much more confidence. So they're not just saying bird every time they see one of those birds. So instead now they're going to say, oh yeah, we saw that toucan, and leaving those up on display while they're reading so they can look back up and say, oh, that was that one that starts with T. I think that's a toucan, and going back to the story. So really introducing those vocabulary words during the word work portion is also super helpful for those students. Here's an example of the level E book. So for this one, you're now focusing more on added endings. So you might on the board have the added ending and the word that they're looking for, and have them flip through the book and have them actually find that story. So use the magnifying glass to find the story. And then also they can use the car once they do find it to break up the words. So they're going to do find and then ing and then put it together, finding. Then same with the little mini eraser. So they found the word find, they covered up the ending, they made sure they can read the first part, and then they're going to add the ending. So with this, as you can see, like I'm using the same tools over and over again. It doesn't matter if it's a level A text or a level E or an M. It's just a matter of using those same tools in different ways, especially so then when you do have kids who aren't at the table, they see, oh, that group that they think is the high readers is using them too. Then they feel like they're all doing the same thing. So that's another confidence booster rather than, oh, I'm using the baby things that no one else is. So including those tools for all the groups in different ways can be really helpful in boosting confidence and making everyone feel like they're doing similar activities. The next one, this is a level F text. And for this one, this is something you would also do with levels K through M, focusing on what is special about these words. So whatever words are noticeable that stick out to you. I always list these in my lesson plans for these passages, but basically like for this one, you would write those 3 different words on the board: time, think, and weekend, and then you would talk about them with the students. And they're most likely going to notice like there's a silent E at the end, there's a digraph, oh, that one has 2 E's, it's a compound word, whatever it is. And then you're going to say, okay, with a partner, so they're going to turn to the person next to them and they're going to go through the text and they're going to look for those words that follow similar patterns. They might highlight them, underline them, however you want to do it. Make it interactive so that they're really doing something, so they're engaged in it. And then you're going to have them tell the group those words, and then you can list them on the board and go over like, okay, we see a long A in this one, we see a long I in that one, whatever it is that you're focusing on. So that way they're then prepared when they read the text, they'll be ready to read those words. And here's just a few more ideas. If you are getting your kids as involved as possible rather than you just leading the group, it's going to pay off in the long run. So grab out those little note cards, butcher paper, whatever it is that you have, and have the kids do a lot of the word work. So they're writing words that are in the ig family. They're breaking up words based on the word family. So that's in the bottom right. They're going back to the text and they're highlighting the different words that fit in those word families, or they're highlighting the words that match up to those patterns that you were talking about. So they're really engaged in it and really focused on those words before they read the story. The other thing, in one of my schools, I had a really large classroom all to myself because it was also the book room. So I was able to use a lot of the space just for my guided reading groups. And what I did was put those phonemic awareness boxes on the ground. And basically for a super wiggly kindergarten group, I would let them jump through the words. So if we were doing the word big, they would get in line and we would jump through, and they would say the sound each time they jump and then say the word together. So b-ig and then big. This is just a quick thing. It doesn't have to last longer than 30 seconds. You just want them to be up and moving. This is one way to do it if you have the space. If you don't, you can simply have these right in front of you, and you just are having the kids do it with their little cars or do it with their hands and have their hands hop through the letters, through the sounds as they go. So the last part of the before reading is then setting purpose for reading. And this is, again, a real quick, barely 30 seconds where you're just having them focus on why they're reading that day. So today we're reading to find out if Piggy got his car. And we want to make sure that we're going to use this strategy. So I always include this in my lesson plans as well before you have the kids go off and read, because it's so important for students to realize like there's a reason that they're reading. And you might tie it to comprehension, and then you also want to tie it to something that they should try. So with that, it's really fun to have each student kind of share something that they could, what a strategy that they could use to figure out challenging words, so that you know that they really know what they can do. So again, they're taking ownership of their reading. And basically, you just want to make sure that everyone has a chance to share something. It doesn't have to be every day, but you want them to share it throughout the week so that you know that every kid knows there's something that they can do. So we're already moving on to the during reading part of the lesson, and basically you'll see that the rest of this is a lot shorter than the first part, and that's basically because with word work, it can become really mundane when they're practicing the silent E yet again. So the more you can add in to make that exciting, the better it is. So even if you do it something like Mondays is always your day to use magnetic letters, Tuesdays is your day to do phonemic word sound boxes, whatever it is that you do, try to set up some sort of routine that the students know, like, oh, I get to use this again today. So it keeps getting exciting for them, but really it's not that much more work on your part. It's just that you know, like, oh, I want to keep this group engaged, so we're going to switch up word work again today. With that being said, we'll go into during reading. So now, this, again, you're focusing heavily on engaging your readers, and you're going to do that in slightly different ways than word work, but basically you're using this time to really get to know your readers as readers themselves and seeing what they can do and what they still need help on. So during this time, students are reading their text, whether it's a book, it's a passage, poem, whatever it is, they have it there in front of them, and they might still be using tools, so you might still have the pointers out. You might let them use the whisper phones. It's kind of up to you. I usually reserve whisper phones for that beginning part where they're more focused on fluency, but pointers are good for this time, but it's really like a no-nonsense kind of zone. Like, this is their time to read. So if they are playing around with the tools instead of using them to help them read, they go back in the container, because you really want this time. It's only a few minutes. You really want them working on being readers. So you have them read. Again, whatever it is that they have in front of them, you want them to be making sure that they're reading. If you do have students who are quicker readers and they're kind of making their way through the passage, you can always have them read it again, or the book, like have them start it again, so that the other kids don't feel bad that they haven't made it through it yet. And I just really focus on explaining, everyone reads at different paces, and we want to each do the best we can. So we will focus on our own text. So it doesn't matter that Dennis is on page 3 or on the first paragraph while Amanda's on the second one. So they just really have to understand that. So the more you emphasize that, the better it is, so that they won't lose that confidence and that they will continue to be engaged rather than focusing on the other kids around them. So during this time, they are whispering, especially if you have the lower students, but even kindergarten through second grade, if you have second graders who still need to whisper read, let them. Just make sure you really emphasize this whispering. We all know, we all have that one student who is trying so hard to whisper, but it's basically like a shout. But usually after a few days of practicing it, they all understand what it is that they're supposed to be doing. So while they're doing that and each kid is reading through their story, you are just listening and actually guiding the students with word solving. So it's not you telling them what the words is. By absolutely no means do not tell them what the word is. You want them to figure it out, because if you weren't there next to them, they need to be able to figure that word out still when they're on their own. So there are different prompts that you can use. I did list these by grade level because basically they change and they get a little more specific and a little more challenging as the kids become better readers. And so basically you can just ask them these questions if they're kind of totally stuck on a word and you notice they're not moving on. You can ask them, like, what's something you could do? If they can't come up with it, then you can say, like, oh, well, did you try looking at the picture? did you see any patterns in that word? Is that one of them that we practiced earlier today? So just reminding them and guiding them, and then it'll hopefully click in their minds that they can try that and then move on and figure out the word. And having these right near you is super helpful so that you know what you can ask the students, and I have that in the freebie later. So now we've already moved on to the after reading, and again, that's because during reading, they're reading. There's not much more to it. You just want them engaged, and you want to be really focusing on how those readers are doing. So in this point for after reading, again, you do want to make sure your students are engaged and really focus on that community of readers, because you've got them now all together talking about the book. And the more excited kids are, the more excited the rest of them will be. If you have one student who's like, ugh, bleh, I don't want to read today, then the rest of them kind of feel that way too. So getting them to keep that excitement up while they're talking about the text is super important. And I do include different prompts that I align to the Common Core State Standards basically per grade level, but you just want to have like some general questions that you know you can ask your students, and then more specific ones that relate directly to that specific text. But so you can do this in a variety of ways. I always recommend having kids write question words, like at the very beginning of your guided reading groups, at the very beginning of the year, having them write out just words that are good question words, because then you can have them come up with questions also to ask each other. So again, you're getting them more involved in it rather than you just doing everything. And then just something simple, write it on a sentence strip. They think like, oh, cool, it's on pink. Pink's my favorite color. So they might focus that much more. So really getting them involved in the discussions through different ways, so that it's not just you up there talking, but that they're actually really having a conversation together. And again, getting themselves excited about it and really being a community of readers. You might also have the written response where they might be drawing pictures, they might be writing, they're going back to the text, whatever it is that they're doing, pull out those fun tools that we love to use. They also love to use them too. So have your own set for your students so that they're not messing up yours. Get the smelly markers, get the fun crayons. They will last so much longer in these little groups because they're not using them all day, but they're just little tools that they can then use during their written responses. You might have them doing this just in journals. They might have questions that they're actually writing the answers to on the passage or wherever it is that you're using. But let them go back to the text and highlight where they found their answer. Let them underline it. Let them really talk about what they saw in the pictures and how they learned whatever it is, just so that they're really involved in their comprehension. You can also do things with butcher paper. You know, this might be your Friday thing. Every Friday, you're going to pull up butcher paper and those smelly markers, and they're going to go through the text and explain something that happened. Postit notes, maybe that's your Thursday thing. So they are the sequencing circles. Basically, you kind of break up the group and say like, okay, everyone's going to write something that happened in the story. You two are going to focus on the beginning, middle, and end, and then they kind of fill in the middle, like if there's parts that they forgot, and put them in order. So those Post-its will get your kids so engaged. They love the opportunity. They see us writing on Post-its. They just want to have the opportunity to do the same kind of thing. Okay, so that is it. We already made it to the end, and here are your freebies. So like I said, there's the parent communication letter for kindergarten through second. I did list those different word rec activity ideas and like different ways to use them. And then I also did the prompts that I recommend using with your readers, and then the blank guided reading lesson plan, and the level B, G, and level L, you're going to see a lesson plan, the passage, and the running record. So I have that there. You should be able to download it from the little notes section on the right. And then also you have that guided reading for K through second certificate of completion. So I really hope that your district is one that does accept those and allow you to use that. But I also wanted you to know that I have, like I said, levels pre-A through V guided reading packs available for you. So if you're someone who needs a little jumpstart to your guided reading time, or if you're like, I just need more resources, we do not have enough at our school, which I think is also a big problem for most people, they are there for you. I have fiction ones, nonfiction ones, and seasonal ones. My fiction and nonfiction go from pre-A to V, and then seasonal is pre-A through M. So if that's something that you're interested in, I do have a ton of different bundles that are already heavily discounted to get you organized for all your different guided reading groups. And I'm super happy to have you here today. So if there are any questions you have, please feel free to email me. I would love to help you out and get you all set for your guided reading groups. So thanks so much for spending this time with me, and please do not hesitate to reach out. Thanks. Bye.